Hello and welcome back to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Dumbest Moments of the Week. Today we've got some real interesting, real dumb moments from Alex too, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. First, here's a video by the Now This News Twitter account, a far-left propaganda-pushing website who pretends to be some sort of legitimate news source, when really they're just liberal mouthpieces who turn and twist everything in their favor dishonestly, and all while under the guise of being actual real reporters, when they're not. Their BS tweet says this: AOC made a great point about white supremacist violence and the label of terrorism. White supremacist violence, you say? Well, I sure haven't heard any of that going around lately. Not in 2019 current year, United States of America. Saying there's white supremacist violence would imply that groups of white people are banding together in the streets and out there trying to take on the other races. Have you guys heard about any of that in the news, online, or in the papers, anywhere? Because I'm pretty sure if we had KKK members marching in the streets, taking out minorities, well, someone would have put that on YouTube by now. Really, what's going on here is left-wingers try and call everyone a white supremacist, racist, woman-hating Nazi. These terms basically mean nothing at this point too. Now, we might know where Now This and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are going with this story, but it's not really going to make much sense in the end either. Regardless, this should be good to watch, so let's go ahead and take a look at the video.
It seems as though white men invoking white supremacy and engaging in mass shootings are almost immune from being labeled domestic terrorists in their violence. Mr. Ricci, the San Bernardino attack was labeled the San Bernardino attack of December 2nd, 2015.
Those shooters weren't white supremacists, by the way. Do the names Saeed Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik sound like white people to you? Now, probably AOC is about to use this attack as an example of a time when criminals were called out for being terrorists, but in this case, they should be called that. According to the FBI's investigation of this incident, the perpetrators were homegrown violent extremists, inspired by foreign terrorist groups. They were clearly terrorists, but Cortez is pissed that we are calling them that, either because they're minorities like her, or more likely, it's because they're Muslims, who are clearly the left's protected pet project for some reason right now. Regardless, that's what's really going on here in the background. AOC is mad because we're calling a spade, and then, because she's so pissed, she wants to call white shooters spades too, when really, they should be called clubs or diamonds or something. Forgive my poker metaphors here, but shortly, soon, you'll see what I'm talking about in the rest of the video.
Was labeled as a domestic terrorist incident. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Mr. Austin, do you know the June 12th, 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting was also labeled as a domestic terrorist incident, correct?
That's my understanding.
Mr. Salim, when Dylan Roof, a 21-year-old white supremacist, entered the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church...
Ah, the old classic Dylan Roof gambit, huh? Not surprising coming from a puppet like AOC, whose former puppet master in the beginning was none other than Cenk Uygur, a notorious and terrible reporter, supposed reporter, at the Young Turks. Cenk also started the Justice Democrats, the far left-wing political action group who cast Alex as one of their political actors early on. She was assigned with the task to primary and or vote out other Democrats who weren't extreme or socialist enough for this new wave of crazy Looney Tunes. Long story, but to put it briefly, what I'm getting at is Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks always try and bring up this Dylan Roof story too. And of course, it's a horrible tragedy that shouldn't be taken lightly or forgotten, but the way AOC and the Young Turks bring up the Roof story is pretty dishonest and manipulative at best. And they're being outright offensive and disrespectful to the victims at worst. You see, here, AOC is bringing up Roof after mentioning two other shootings, ones which turn out to be connected to Muslims and terrorist groups. But Alex doesn't like seeing the truth exposed about her Muslim friends, so she pivots to talking about and attacking white people. And Dylan Roof was a white shooter after all, so of course, that's why these radical leftists are using his story and bringing it up all the time. The thing is though, Roof did act alone, and he wasn't connected to any other groups at all, let alone was he connected to some underground white supremacist terror group that really doesn't exist. terrorist. Those other shooters were connected though, and their crimes turned out to be textbook terrorism. You see, those letters in that combination, terrorism, well, that actually means something. Terrorism isn't just a term we can throw around and slap onto everyone, particularly slapping onto people we don't like. Alex Cortez may think this is how it works, but in the real world, things don't play out that way. So this whole video and speech she's giving on this Now This tweet, well, it's all based on a lie. Or if you want to give Alex the benefit of the doubt, she may just be too dumb to know what terrorism actually means. And well, given Cortez's low IQ background, her being this stupid is a legitimate possibility.
In your belief as a leader in this space, it was an incidence of domestic terrorism, but it was not labeled as such.
That's correct.
Was the white supremacist shooting at Pittsburgh Tree of Life Synagogue labeled as a domestic terrorist incident?
I'm not aware that it was, although then Attorney General Sessions came out and called it that, but the charges that have been brought to bear and are currently playing out in court are not ones of terrorists.
Damn, this guy is really cucking to Alex hardcore here. Have some freaking balls, my dude. This chick is berating you like it's your fault that words exist and they have specific definitions. I don't know why, but Cortez thinks that if she wants something to be terrorism, then that makes it so. But really, there are strict definitions and official ways this goes down in our government and in the law, in the court. Now, I know Cortez sounds like a child pretending to be a concerned politician, but damn, she couldn't even be bothered to do a little bit of homework on this issue before giving this speech in frickin' Congress? What a joke. Shit, I'm just a guy making videos in my spare bedroom, and I can figure this out pretty easily without much effort. For example, Cornell's law school has a website that makes finding these laws and precedents pretty damn easy. Let's go ahead and go back to school here for a moment and read over this official definition, because God knows Alex won't bother to do this. The definition comes from Title 18, U.S. Code 2331. Section 5 of it says, the term domestic terrorism means activities that involve acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state. B, appear to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, and occur primarily within the territorial district of the United States. Seems pretty cut and dry to me. So, with that said, I wouldn't call Roof's crime terrorism either, because he's just some crazy local who went nuts for no reason. And also, Dylan Roof was trying to get attention, and he was doing it all for his own ego, not for some other political reasons. Now, on the other hand, the San Bernardino and Pulse nightclub shootings, they had actual terrorist-related people involved in them. Foreign influences were at play too, and they're the reason those crimes got brought up to the terrorist level. Really though, Dylan Roof's crime was more of a murder, or maybe a hate crime against local blacks, but those Muslim shooters, they were in fact trying to coerce and influence the local population and government, and they were doing it in some pretty devastating and scary ways. I think you get the point. So let's go ahead and get back to that original video of Alex for one more clip.
Attacks committed by Muslim Americans were almost automatically labeled as domestic terrorist incidents, yet white supremacist shooting after shooting after shooting is not. And I can't help but come to the conclusion that these labels, what's being labeled as terrorism, is almost exclusively coming down to the identity.
Oh, boo-hoo. Who even cares what we call this shit at this point? They're all a bunch of criminally insane killers who went on rampages. Call it scary, terrible, murderous, terrorism, or a hate crime, or whatever. Who cares as long as we call these people out and stop these deaths when we can? That's what actually matters. Well, that should be what matters, but clearly, this is not what's important to AOC. I'm curious what she actually cares about here too, since it appears she has two goals going here at once. At first, you might think she just wants to label everyone she hates as a terrorist. Now, I think this is influenced by her anti-white racism. That's why Alex wants to call white shooters this despite it not always fitting the legal definition, but also, with the way Cortez is speaking about these other Muslim killers, it's almost like she wants to defend those shooters. She calls them Muslim Americans in an almost complimentary or endearing way. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alex also wanted to defend and not call these Muslim killers terrorists, while also trying to label everyone white as a white supremacist. And also, sometimes we're terrorists too when she really doesn't like us. Why not? Next, let's wrap things up today by looking at one more AOC video. This time, she made a cringy informational piece with none other than Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Democratic presidential candidate, which Trump endearingly calls Pocahontas, on the account of Warren pretending to be a Native American for years. She even embarrassingly took a public DNA test that showed she was even less Native than the average American is. Regardless of that, brain dead and tone deaf socialists socialists like AOC, they will still associate with this political hack. So let's go ahead and take a look at this final video and see what's going on.
I'm Senator Elizabeth Warren.
And I'm Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And we're teaming up today because we have some questions for Steve Mnuchin.
Stephen Mnuchin is President Trump's Treasury Secretary, and he is a walking example of what happens when rich and powerful people put other rich and powerful people into power.
You say that like it's an inherently bad thing, Alex. What the heck are you talking about, though? Of course, rich people are going to be powerful. They have the money to make their will happen and become a reality and to attain power. And in turn, powerful people are, of course, going to be rich because they can use their power to get money and wealth. Why not? So these two traits pretty much go hand in hand. And as we've learned in every Spider-Man movie, they've told us that with great power comes great responsibility. So when these people get rich and powerful, they also have to assign other people into positions of power to work for them or carry out the delegation and the work needed in other positions. And well, when rich and powerful people go to hire someone, they're not just going to hire some poor street bum from California or some ditzy bartender from the Bronx. God no, we're not the Justice Democrats. No, rich and powerful people hire each other. They hire other rich and powerful people. Perhaps the people being hired beneath them are a little less rich and powerful than the ones who hired them or who came before them, but I think you get the point here. There's a chain of command. So yeah, when it came time for Trump to hire a Treasury Secretary, of course he hired someone that was already a bit rich and powerful. Mnuchin had experience as a high-level player in business and financial institutions, so he made a good fit for this role too. But for some reason, AOC and Elizabeth Warren want poor, powerless people hired into some of the biggest roles in our government, all because they're stupid and they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Mnuchin was on the board of Goldman Sachs, and then he went to serve on the board of Sears.
Yeah, but it's not the old Sears. Now, when my daddy had a heart attack when I was a girl, my mama got a full-time job, minimum wage, answering phones at Sears.
God damn, can we move this story along, Liz? You're putting me to sleep here, old lady. So what? Your mom worked at Sears a very long time ago. Cool story. I doubt it's even actually true though, since, you know, Elizabeth Warren is the politician who lied about her past for decades in order to further advance her job and political career. So I can't say I'm ready to take this Sears story at face value coming from someone like that.
No. Today, it's a very different Sears.
And that's because in the early 2000s, Stephen Mnuchin's old college roommate, a private investment fund owner named Eddie Lampert, put his friend, Stephen Mnuchin, on the Sears board.
Again, Alex is acting like a friend has never been hired by another friend before. She's saying this as if people hiring people they know is some sort of crime or something. Now, I do understand that nepotism gets a bad rap sometimes, and hiring friends and relatives doesn't always work out either. But let's not pretend we're not living in the real world either. People hire their friends all the time. It happens in every business ever since the beginning of time. Also, what's really ludicrous here is that AOC and Warren are trying to pin the entire downfall of Sears onto Steve Mnuchin because he works for Trump. But really, no one man took down that company and put it into bankruptcy. Sears was a billion-dollar worldwide corporation after all, with hundreds of stores. But for some reason, let's call it political bias, well, these radical liberals want to blame that whole downfall of Sears onto Steve Mnuchin. Why? Because he's a Republican associated with Trump, and they don't like people like that.
Eddie Lampert is a guy who likes to want to be a winner, and this was an L.
Instead of investing in the company, he sucked about $6 billion in value out of it and then did stock buybacks, which certainly made him a lot of money.
Whatever, Grandma. Sounds like Eddie Lampert might be the one that's more at fault here, though. And then they think since Lampert hired his old roommate Mnuchin, who now works for Trump, this means something nefarious to them, like they're trying to connect it to the president. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon over here. Please. And I hope the ladies and their backs aren't hurting after this as well, because they've been reaching big time with this one. In the end, we've seen another week chock full of AOC and her dumb moments. First, she wants to call everyone white supremacists. Classic. Then Alex wants to label white shooters as terrorists, when they technically aren't. And then also, while we're at it, let's not call the actual terrorists what they are, because the left loves Muslims for some reason. What a goddamn joke. And then we finally ended this with this bullshit round about how Mnuchin works for Trump and then he worked for a company that went bankrupt, blah blah blah, and well, you know what I mean. I think we can clearly see here why AOC has gotten her own series called Dumbest Moments of the Week. What do you guys think? Are white supremacists really a legitimate threat in current year America? Have you ever seen one or met one on the streets? And does Alex actually care about these attacks and their victims, or is she just trying to use these murders to make her own political gains? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.